Right. I think we can start. Welcome everyone to another Moot, which is being held unusually on a Saturday because our guest lives in Siberia, where the clocks are somewhat different from what they are here in London. As is the practice, I will say a few words, light a candle, and we can begin. I'll direct my words north, which means I won't be looking into the camera.
Ett status religiosineh nocturnis de redomagnis senilogeris sitiontem sicus. Adela ausninga tempoli de pos. Marlot mantikis of the mountain. Brande of brandy garden, pulling air, filling packets of full mother of Marlot. Besser of Marlot to the end is Askr of Odin. Brand is lit by a brand. A man from another man may become wiser, but from conceit may remain ignorant. Truth, like the sky, is above and beyond us all. Blessed gods of our peoples and lands, may we use this time together for profit and with pleasure, spend it in friendship with you and each other.
Polemos panton men pater este, panton de Basilius. War is father and king of all. That's a fragment by Heraclitus, fragment 53. The image of the individual soul and the times in which we live as a battlefield, whereupon the gods and the anti-gods fight, is central to the Indo-European religious vision. The Olympians against the Titans, the Pandavas and Lord Krishna against the Kauravas, the Aesir and Lord Odin against the Jotuna or the giants. The word polemos means battle. Our speakers' two eponymous volumes attempt to map the landscape of contemporary conflict and crisis and its antecedents. That's to say, the battlefield upon which we all find ourselves. The other image that I think is necessary to understand this image of battle is that of transcendent bliss, the beauty of harmony and fulfillment that one's soul is drawn towards, like a moth towards a light, towards the blue flower of Nivalis, towards the grail. Religious practice is the search for this direct access to the radiance of divinity, for an intimation of heaven, of moksha, of one's ultimate destination. And this is the prize of the battle, the laurels of victory. The battle is fought to allow the bliss to be born, and the first keeps the second alive. But the second sustains the first, like a mother feeding her son, or like the sun illuminating the path to the wood. It's perhaps at the pole of paganism that divinity is immanent in the universe and self-manifesting rather than creating the universe from without, almost like a warrior king whom we need to support in the struggle. These two images are combined in an Old Norse liturgical invocation, either Sigur or Friðarse. To you may there be victory and peace. If one attends a Hindu temple, one will hear the same sentiments. Sanatana Dharma Ki Jai. May the religion of eternal principles prevail. With that, with which I think most of us would give our assent to, I warmly invite Askr to speak, and I don't know what that noise is, but I think I will mute everyone. Mute everyone. Yeah. Ask, please. Can we see your fine featured face and hear your voice? So you have to unmute and yeah, that's good to see you. And yeah, if you could unmute as well.
Greetings. Once again, pardon my language and pardon my internet connection. Thank you, Stet, for this online meeting, for your invite, for our second face-to-face in Zoom conversation about modern paganism, pagan traditionalism, and my work, Polemos. The second volume by PRAV Publishing, released in 2021. Yes, as I should to say, Polemos, it is one band work, is whole work, written continuously. It is not a two-volume band, it is one work, but publisher decided to split it to the two books. So it's not a sequel, it is a second part of the complete explanation of pagan traditionalism. So in Russia, it was published in 2016, so 6 years ago, and some aspects has changed. Some persons died in Russia, in Europe, and some my personal points of view on some topics also Russia in also to introduce this band. I think I remember and shortly talk about main topics, main chapters of this work with new material and comments by after 6 years after this work was published. So the first chapter, if I remember all such correct, dedicated to the and Abrahamic religion. What's ontological, metaphysical, and mythological new, special, and original we can find in Abrahamism and okay, and how we can separate and draw a line of difference between paganism and Abrahamism. Because if we look, for example, on Judaism, they save and still they keep a lot of pagan aspects in their life, in everyday life, in politics, in their ethnocentrism, for example, and some kind of Neoplatonic mysticism, late medieval. And they are very close to the tribalism, for example, or look like pagan traditions, but they also different. And the next step is Christianity, and in my opinion, Protestantism, modern, especially modern Protestantism theology, provided by Bultmann and Paul Ricoeur, they provide a pure Abrahamism, pure Abrahamical metaphysics and philosophy and theology, of course. And Islam is the most radical anti-pagan and also anti-other Abrahamic branches. In practice, they also anti-Semitic, anti-Christian. It's also a very representative example of what is Abrahamical faith and how it established a terrible struggle and war against pagan traditions and against any other people who follow their ancestral faith. So if we observe and dig deeper into their theology, their philosophy, their mysticism, we can find a lot of traces, a lot of footsteps of paganism, a lot of pagan great thinkers, especially Platonic and Neoplatonic, like Plato, Jamrich, Gemis, Plifo, and so on. All of them, all of Christian monks or Islamic Sufis, Sufi masters, dervishes, and many of them, they read them, save their books, comment them, and incorporate Hellenic philosophy, mysticism, xenology, the teaching of the great one, into their own mysticism, like Sufis, ritual practices, invocations, use Greek theology dictionary, and speaking openly, I can conclude that, for example, Christianity is completely pagan in their roots. If we read, for example, the Holy Fathers of Christianity, their works early, there's a lot of polemics between different Platonical teachings, and they use them, and they feel their the whole building of Christian theology established on Hellenic fundament. So we can consider they follow pagan thinking. Inside the Christianity, we can find a lot of pagan thinking, pagan philosophy, so-called Hellenic wisdom, and not only in high-level theological discourse, but also in the white masses, the white folk masses. So what's the main difference? So we also can find it in Judaism, especially medieval mysticism, like Kabbalah, or in Islam, in Islamic sacred poetry, in Sufis, wisdom, and mysticism, all of them based on Hellenic wisdom. And this wisdom is pagan. We can recall in memory Meister Eckhart, the Rhine mysticism, and how he opened his work. He writes, I am very glad to my ancient Hellenic teachers. So he established he continue a line of Hellenic Neoplatonism and its mysticism. So how we can say he's a Christian Catholic mystic, a great teacher of spiritual enlightenment, but he openly follow Plotin, for example. So in my opinion, and how I written in book, the main difference laid in ontology. Paganism, different pagan traditions, especially European and Indo-European, have different ontological origin or ontological source or spring, different than Abrahamic. The main motto of Abrahamic theology is a doctrine of creation of nihil, creation ex nihilo. God creates the world only for one time. It's not a cyclical time when world dying and reborn once again and once again and once again. It's only one time linear history, and he makes it from the nothing, from nihil.
Yeah.
But if we remember paganism and especially Advaita from Hindu, we know that in pagan tradition, the many worlds made by manifestationism principle, made by God who manifests itself, the divine nature manifests itself, and many of different souls, human beings, creatures, and worlds became they established to exist and live on. So there is no ontological difference or essential difference between man and divine. The nature of every essence is divine nature, like the famous words tat tvam asi. Atman is Brahman. So you are the God. You are the sparkle of divine nature. So there is no ontological difference. So we have a deal with some wholeness. But in Abrahamic religions, we have only very strong established ontological dualism. We have the God, and he's only one, and we have the world, and man is the center of this world. The fallen Adam and his destiny. And he cannot become a god. He only can be his creature, like pottery, like some craftsmen who make a pot and leave it alone, for example, like in the late theology. And this is the main difference. Different doctrines, paganism, equal, manifestationism theology, and all Abrahamic religions equal creationism theology by manifests and by creation, and it's like radical Dvaita and non-duality Advaita. Paganism focused on Advaita. And a little bit later, when I worked on the book published by Arktos called Gods in the Abyss, I consider, and now I stand on this position and advocate this position, the Abrahamical God, as we know, is one for all three branches, Christians, Muslims, and Judaism. They glorify and follow only one God, and every of them think they only them follow the right way, and behavior of this God, his words to his followers, his acts, his morality, and their relationships between to the other God, to the other traditions, to the gods of other folks, of other people. It's very look like Hellenic anti-divine figures we can find in mythology. It's Titanism, like Jotuns or Tursus from German-Scandinavian mythology, or Asuras from Hinduism. So for me, as I think the Abrahamical God, the Yahweh God, Yehovah God, he is not a God at all. He's not a divine figure. He's not a divine actor, not a divine subject. He's a titanical subject. He's those who we call Jotun or Asura or Titan, and he's just take over all of original pagan gods of Semitic peoples many years ago and became the totalitarian figure that conquer these people and fuel them of totally hatred to the all gods. So the essence of Abrahamical religions, it is a war against any kind of paganism. We can find 1,000 of quotes of speeches and words about. So if we try to explain it inside of our European mythology, we easily find it. So who was always against the gods? Titans, Jotuns, Tursus. So their god is not God at all. He is completely, for me, as I see, he is completely expression of hubris or gibris. It's a Greek word meaning over the limits, or the pardon, forgot the special meanings. Anyway, Greek word hubris. It's a essence of Titanism. There is a nature of Titanic way of how they relate to the other gods to the man kind, to the middle world. It's against gods, against beauty, against harmony. It's a radical, disharmonical, and radical dare against the rules, against the dharma, against the because the eternal law of. So for me, and advocate
Oh, I don't think we didn't hear the last word. It was a bit yeah, the connection was poor. Perhaps you could
Allah,
repeat that.
anyway, one of the okay. Yes, thank you. Yes. Hubris against divine and cosmic order. Yes, of nature. And for me, I advocate this position. Yegova or Allah, anyway, any name, it's not a divine subject, it's a titanical subject, and he's conquer lands, conquer people, and killing other gods or disrespect them and saying, oh, it's not only gods, it's demons and so on, devils followers, and you know how and what they tell about our gods. So
Askr, when you, I think I'll at some point try to summarize what you said in case people perhaps haven't been able to hear clearly and aren't familiar with the ideas or haven't read your book. So when you've come to the end of describing your view of Abrahamism, I'll just say a few words in summary, if I may. Is that okay?
yes.
Yeah.
So summary. I follow that thesis that Abrahamical God, Yehovah or Yahweh, we can explain his theology and his behavior and acts and teaching against paganism, against pagan traditions and pagan folks we can find in Bible, for example, or in Islamic teaching. We can explain it inside our own pagan tradition, like us, not like us, Titans, Greek, or Jotuns, or Asuras, if we use German-Scandinavian language or Hindu language. So, Abrahamical Christian God is not God at all, it's Titan. And he's fooled by the sin against the cosmic order. It's not only my point of view, not only my opinion, but I share it and advocate it. It's shortly my thesis sounds like that.
I'll just summarize briefly that Ask talking about the Abrahamic deity, his relation to creation is that he stands apart from it. He created the world out of nothing, and isn't manifested in it, which is different from the pagan view, wherein deity is in some sense non-different from creation. Deity manifests himself in creation and in the objects of creation, namely men and women, of course. So there is a certain harmony and unity in the vision, which is different from this very strong division between the divine world and the human world. Creation also happened sort of at a point in time, and there is a linear development of things which is different from the classical pagan views, which are cyclical. Even this universe presupposing the Big Bang is just one episode in some much larger structure. And Aske identifies the character of the Abrahamic deity with the forces that one would call the anti-gods in the different traditions, such as the Titans, the Jotuns, the Asuras, and is, as we all know, a very jealous figure that doesn't really like, that doesn't permit any other forms of worship. I think that's most of the points. Yeah, please go on.
Thank a lot for this brief. So the next chapter is dedicated to the eros and sexuality. It's one troublemaking topic, and in 2016, I think we all didn't expect the madness around feminism, around queer theory, gender studies, and all of this. So, but no one can expect how fast and how far this madness goes this years. But it's my principal position, and provided in my books. European question about relationships between different sexes, between men and women, it's a very complicated question and problem. And here we can follow to clarify and solve some problems and positions. We must follow each culture and tradition we want to explore and to find the answer. In other words, there is no universal answer, and universal should establish family, kids, and how sexual relationships may be described. Each own have their own rules, their own customs, or their own traditions about sexuality, their own myths about women's, for example, and different kinds of women's metaphysics, like Julius Evola, for example. He described two of them, woman as mother and woman as lower one. In German mythology, we can find woman as warrior, and in Greek also, for example, Athena, divine warrior and also a woman known in the European cultures and in tradition. There is different, some kind of different myths and social structure of sexual relationships, and we cannot judge them using our own values and customs. So it's a question about plurality of cultures, and inside them we can find a different ways. But in our European, of course, traditions, we can keep our let me use this word. We should keep our conservative values and classical model roles of man and woman behavior and relationships, and we can find in, for example, German mythology strongly judgment against homosexuality, the myth of Thor's wedding when he was dressed in wedding's dress, but after he killed everyone, and it is also his wedding was established in Thorsian context. It was against Titans, against Thurs and Jotuns, and he killed all of them. So sexual perversions in European culture, it's some kind of hubris, as I said. It's some kind of hubris. And of course, I also mentioned very destructive and negative role of feminism, of modern feminism, as we know it, first, second, third wave of feminism and post-feminism. It is also and always ideology against the natural and divine order of men and women natures and way of life and ways of family, of romantic sexual relationships and so on. And in my other book, Tradition and Future Shock, is now only in Russia available, but then in this book have written a lot of how modern post-feminist or late feminist theories, how they destroying not only essential order of sexes, but how they establish anti-human ideology, not only anti-man or anti-woman, but anti-human at all. It's like a xenofeminism, post-feminism, transhumanism, feminism theories, and so on. This is completely madness for me. But this work I started in Polemos, the second band. You can find a short history of feminism and how and why it's not. It's impossible to be a pagan and to be a healthy pagan and traditional pagan and to follow, for example, second or third way feminism. It's also a Julius Evola position that feminism is a fake ideology. So in this chapter, I underline or highlight the 2 points. It's points against feminism and modern famous gender studies and any kind of perversions, anti-left liberal, if we may use political terminology, and but if we look to the non-Indo-European or non-European peoples, societies, we should describe them and judge them using their own traditions and customs. So there is no universal order or universal rules. And for example, the peoples of Polynesia or far Siberia, the Russian North, they have some different relationships between men and men, but this relationship is not a homosexual, for example. And we can consider what it is using our ordinary dictionary or values, and to understand what happens in their culture, we should use their language, their myths, and to make some decision or finally make some judgment of them, or not to make this judgment. So that's what I can say about short. And of course, the Sex by Julius Sebola, I can advise to read this his book about his woman as mother and woman as lover, like Aphrodite or Freya. I agree with his two metaphysical models.
Askar, I wondered whether it might be soon a good idea to open up to some questions because of the problems with the connection. I don't know. Do you have very much more to say? I think we've reached about 45 minutes.
Excuse me.
I was wondering how much more you would like to say before we have some questions.
I have no time limits for you today, so you can moderate our conversation, ask questions, or or pause, stopping me, and so on. I also looking comments and in chat, so I can answer if you type something in chat.
Yeah,
I see and can answer too.
But did you have, I think we spoke perhaps about 40 minutes or so. I just wondered if you had much more to say before we can have some questions, because I feel that the connection's not very good, and some of the words are quite difficult to hear because of the lagging effects. But I mean, if you'd like to say a few more words about the book, then you know, we can do that, and then we can open to questions.
Okay, so I summarize shortly and laconical. So the next shortly chapter is dedicated to some political implication of pagan traditionalism in our culture. Right-wing politics, left-wing politics, classical theories like Platonical the state dialogue I use as a paradigm, and in the late sub-chapters I try to understand and make some incorporate the ideas of radical anti-civilization discourse of Theodore Kaczynski, of Pentti Linkola, anarcho-primitivism into the pagan traditionalism, how it will work. Is it the same or it's very different and it's impossible to compare them, incorporate one into the other. And this idea, I use, I take this idea and make other book, Tradition and Future Shock, is briefly described on my website in English, so you can read the chapter list and what about this book. This subchapter from Polemos became a different book about radical primitivism and anti-civilization, anti-industrial society discourse inside the pagan traditionalism. Of course, including the European New Right, Alain de Benoist, and late Julius Evola, late and Junger, late Lev Tolstoy, Russian thinker and writer ideas. And so this chapter became the whole study in other book. And for me, of course, the state dialogue is a paradigm of politics. And the last chapter is totally dedicated to the such topic as the left-hand path in paganism. And it is this chapter stands in some point state against the whole previous chapter and previous. Polemos is the right hand path philosophy of pagan traditionalism. But the last chapter shortly introduce the different approach to the spirituality in modern times and how we can find it, how we can reach the divine nature inside ourselves, not by the ways of political activism, but using the most radical practices and theology of Dionysus cult, some modern European occult teaching. And this chapter also mentioned German-Scandinavian tradition, modern Odinism way. This chapter bring the new book, Gods in the Abyss, by Arktos, also totally dedicated to the German logos, to the very complicated figure of God Odin, or German Wotan, and his mysticism and his metaphysics and ontology. So if you read the chapter about the left-hand path in the second, this book by Arktos in English, because it's a continuation of development of some topics I shortly described in this chapter. Is the second band of Polemos, and I can also add. I mentioned Aleister Crowley ideas and some modern European. Now I can say it's not necessary to pay attention to them. So Crowley is completely not interesting. It's unnecessary to read his works, and modern European occult is it's not original ideas. It's also the same that great pagan for. So it's for me, it's better to go to the sources, to the origins, to the spring of the river, but not reading the not the low quality, low quality of the book. And now I can answer on your questions and maybe clarify some unclear moments in my unclear speech. Pardon one more time, and explain some maybe some theses.
Yes. Thanks very much, Askr. We are involved fighting a battle against the yutna of bad internet connections and so forth.
Yes, of course.
Our whole lives are frequently doing this, so we must do it bravely and continue. And I know it's not easy to discuss complex ideas in this format, but at least we are trying to do so. And I think spiritually, the right aspiration of the heart and the mind is the important thing that does have good effects, even though they may not be so obvious. So I thank you very much for joining us and trying to present these difficult ideas very well. I wonder if any one has any particular questions. I think I can see a finger raising from some. But before that, I must say to anyone that hasn't read this book, I was very impressed by the ability that Ask has to write about ideas from different traditions as if they were his own ideas. I think from what he was saying, one might assume that it was a book that spoke negatively about Christianity or Islam or any other traditions. But I think that is the great strength. He does speak about in individual thinkers, individual mystics, with sympathy and insight. So it's a work of wide vision, not one of narrow partisanship. So it's certainly worth it. Stefan, please unmute and let's hear your question.
Well,
or comment.
I must thank Askr, and I want to tell that I'm feeling very much in wavelength with or in the same frequency. It's hard to say it. Yeah, but it's very interesting. He has also pointed out that Christianity has been transformed somehow, and partially, not completely, because it still remains an Abrahamic religion, but it has partially been transformed through Neoplatonic philosophy. And the question is, how has it been done? I have actually found the very some very concrete cornerstone of the fundament for this illusion, because it's an illusion it is about, because there has been an identification, a false identification by the church fathers, especially the Greek-speaking church fathers, of Yahweh with Atman, with the Indo-European one, the one of Heraclitus, or with being of archaic Greek philosophy and of Neoplatonic philosophy also. And what has this cornerstone been? I have found it. I think so. In Old Testament, there is a feature where Moses comes up to the mountain and he sees the burning bush, and Yahweh, the tribal god of Israel, which he is, speaks to him. And Moses asks him, "Who are you?" And he says in Jewish, Yahweh. Well, Yahweh in Jewish, I have found out that it means I am who I am. I am who I am. But when the 70 translated it into Greek as Septuagint, it is known as Septuagint, this translation, which is used, the Greek translation of Old Testament. Then it was not translated as I am who I am, but it was translated as I am the one who is. And there is a tremendous difference between these two. I am who I am. I'm your tribal god, and I am the best of all other gods. So no talking about actually about how is it called? Monism. It is not a monism. He recognizes that there are other gods, and he is a tribal god, and I am who I am, he says. And the Greek false translation in Septuagint is I am the one who is. I mean, that means I'm the everything. I'm Atman.
Yeah.
And this is a misconception, and that was very convenient for infusing, for somehow making a strange hybrid that made it more likable to be accepted by the Greek and Aryan world. And this is kind of, yes, but still he maintains all the characteristics of tribal god, because we have all those enjoyable stories about his adventure with Jewish people, and especially in Old Testament, but also in New Testament. And still, at the same time, he is the one who embodies everything, because I am the one who is. In Greek, it is called ego imi o on. Der Seiende in German. I am the being, the one who is. But so, this is not what there is in the original Jewish text.
I think what you're saying, Stefan, is that, as you said, the original is the description that's entirely appropriate to one God amongst many, one God for a particular group of people, but it was interpreted with all the jealousy of a tribal God that kind of extended throughout being as such. I mean, it was this kind of combination of elements. Askr, would you like to respond at all to that comment?
Oh, yes, we can find a lot of interesting when we pay attention to the name of Abrahamic God, and I also here theory one of the many tribal gods, but he is conquered the central place of the pantheon, of Semitic pantheon on the south, and he is thrown out as all other gods, usurpator or the tyrant. So in ancient times, Allah, he also was one of the many tribal gods, but he became the one And of course, it's very interesting how we lost the meanings in translations, especially in Greek, because New Testament it's written in Greek language, and because it's also a language of whole European philosophy, we can find many of trouble places. I can agree and find Stefan's additional interesting to search and develop this way.
Thanks very much. Mick, yeah, would you like to read your question?
Yeah, I've got a terrible internet connection. That's why I wrote it down. But if everyone can hear me,
yeah, we can hear you fine.
Oh, great. Well, thank you for a great lecture, Askr. And I thought the book was fantastic as well. And from reading the book, my question was whether you think that peoples of Germanic heritage, specifically Northwest Europeans, Anglo-Saxons, Protestantism, and then having their societies playing somewhat of a vanguard role in terms of being sites of both modernism and postmodernism, have something of a predestined role as accelerationists in terms of the necessities of cyclical time, or whether they merely have a biocultural susceptibility or weakness in terms of being negatively affected by forces of dissolution. The question's written down in the chat if I'm not putting myself across too well.
Yeah, Askr, yeah, maybe you can have a look at the question in the chat. It might be easier to.
So, also very interesting question. I was really surprised and interested.
I think, could I just perhaps try and summarize it, because I think it was quite a complex one to. I think the essence of what you're saying is, are people in Northwest Europe predestined to have to somehow increase some of what could be regarded as the sort of forces of the Kali Yuga, maybe, with the fanatical Protestantism and now postmodernism and modernism? Is that essentially what you're asking, Mick?
Well, I'm asking. It's an either/or question, or perhaps it's both. Whether our peoples we have this predestined role as accelerationists in terms of rolling the time cycles over, or whether we have some biocultural susceptibility to be affected by these kind of negative forces of dissolution.
Thanks. Yeah.
I was surprised and very interested. Why Germans? Why North Europeans, Anglo-Saxons? Why Protestantism established in these nations? Why? Because I didn't find authentic origins. So later I just take a position about it was some kind of predestination, because the decline of the sacred order is metaphysically predetermined. So it's not so important which nation, which country, which branch of European people will provide it into the Midgard, into our historical moment. It's maybe different kinds of, and if you look, for example, to the French thinkers, they also made a lot of negative ideas like Enlightenment, French Revolution, and so on. It's also their role of their role of the great spectacle of the decline of the West, and every folk play its own role, provide different forces, different levers to move the history forward into the abyss and toward the death of the not only the West but the whole world for me. So yes, I think they was maybe affected, maybe they lost their gods and tradition, and Thursian forces overwhelm them, conquer them, and it became in forms of Protestantism. Maybe it will. It's not always necessary to find a purely logical and historically correct explanation. Sometimes it's just a metaphysical. Someone must provide these forces into the world, and so Anglo-Saxons. No, okay, it will be Anglo-Saxons. In the next time, it will be French. It's next time it will be for maybe Russians, or will be somebody.
Okay, no, thanks.
Thanks for that, Askr.
You have a slightly different perspective. Sorry, Nick. Yeah. Perhaps someone in the room, Father Frank, if you have any comments or questions, please.
Well, it was an interesting talk, and many of the topics touched upon are fascinating, and I would love to learn more about them because of poor connection and other things, just bits which I could pluck out of speech. I wonder if, very briefly, the question of also touched upon by the Greek guy who made the exegesis of the original I am who I am. In fact, that's been acknowledged, it's common knowledge, it's accepted. Initially, the Hebrews did not think of their God as a universal God, a God of the universe. They thought of their God as a tribal God amongst many. Only it was their God, so it was more powerful, and not necessarily. So that's generally accepted. The other thing is that the Abrahamic religion, I know that's a very common trope these days that's been criticized. Professor Levinson from Harvard, who's a Jew, he says there is no Abrahamic religions. Abraham belongs to the Jews. The Muslims and the Christians are appropriated Abraham. So he exploded the notion. Sorry, I will carry on too much. Let me ask him just one specific question. Could you say more about this? You claim that it is impossible to be incompatible to be a pagan and a feminist. Can you say more about that?
Thank you. I hope you were able to hear Father Frank's comments about Abrahamism. He sharpened his reaction to a simple question. If you could say a little more about why you think it's impossible to be a proper pagan and to be a feminist. Why are those two things incompatible?
Okay. For me, the main goal and the final focus, final horizon of feminism, it's ideas of so-called xenofeminism or alien feminism, but correctly xenofeminism, and transhuman feminism is ideas of um, American woman feminism and separation again, separation of from society now, but the main idea is to overcome the difference between genders, between sexes. It's impossible to solve this problem because we always have our bodies. Our bodies is its difference, biological, physiological, and so on. And their main idea to overcome the human body. If the human body exists, we can establish any kind of difference, and of course it will lead us to patriarchy, to different to the their classical problems and statements. So they teach we should follow, and there must not be any human body, not male, not female body, but some kind of cyborgs or uploading our consciousness and minds into the global web. And only then, when we lose our bodies, we lose our male and man nature, masculine nature, and they lose their female body and feminism, feminine nature. When we lose our human nature, we lose our bodies and so on. Only then we can find a final liberation, liberation from patriarchy, from masculinism, from feminism too, and from patriarchy, from any kind. So if you don't have a body, you don't have a problems. So for me, because I stand and I support ideas of Pentti Linkola and great mathematical Theodore. For me, the accelerationism and transhumanism, it's unacceptable, absolutely and totally unacceptable. And the human body, male or female, is very important in many ways in our sacred traditions. We have a lot of symbols like right hand, left hand, legs, head, body, human breast, and so on. It's all sacred symbols, phallus symbols, yoni symbol, and if we lose our body, we lose this symbolism, and we lose our tradition too. For me, feminism, the smallest, the earliest the earliest movements of feminism, like suffragists and so on, they all lead us to this final horizon. So for me, it's impossible to protecting, to promoting paganism, spirituality, and to be a feminist, because it's completely different ways. One way lead us to our divine nature hidden in our human nature, but other one lead us to the subhuman, to the transhuman, to anti-human state of development of the human evolution. It's when you lose your humanity and became cyborg, robots, virtual avatar in metaverse of Zuckerberg. It's also all to this direction. It's for me, it's unacceptable. It's impossible for me to be a feminist and to be a pagan. But of course, I'm not advocate unhealthy relationships, violence, and so on. Once again, Julius Evola, The Metaphysical of Sex, I support his ideas and promote his teaching in this way.
Yeah, I think if you're advocating the truth of manifestationism, that divinity is physically manifested and there is a physically manifest difference between men and women, therefore feminism is not acknowledging that truth. So I think that's I mean that is a very consistent position. I mean, Dirk, I know you may have other thoughts on certain matters. Do you wish to make any comment? Unmute, please, if you.
Yeah, I'm unmuted. Yes, I'm a transhumanist, and I have been for the last 50 years. I don't see the current, what you might call, incarnation of our bodies as being anywhere near the final iteration. I mean, any more than apes are, or our previous hominid ancestors. Neanderthal wasn't. Neither was Homo habilis. So, why are we suddenly the pinnacle and final endpoint? I mean, we certainly know how we can improve things. So, what's special about us here now?
So, I suppose, Dirk, I mean, you would see attempts to continue the evolution in a positive direction as almost being the unfolding of the divine will in another way. Is that, am I putting
essentially, yes. But we know how good people can be. I mean, I don't mean necessarily morally, but certainly in terms of physical capability, mental capability, and so forth. And why can't we just engineer that for everybody? I mean, for example, there's a thing called the hedonic treadmill that psychologists have sort of discovered, as it were. And it's quite simple that people have a kind of set level of happiness. And people have different set levels. So, they win the lottery, they're happy, but they'll eventually come back to their standard level of happiness. Same if they lose their house or whatever, they'll be very unhappy, and then they return to that standard level. Some people have that hedonic treadmill set so low that they suffer from chronic depression their entire lives. Other people who are much luckier, you don't hear about these people because they generally don't they are not a problem, they don't see themselves as a problem, are happy and optimistic all the time. Now, why can't we just push that level up a bit for everybody? Why do people have to suffer depression, for example? Is there some kind of, it sounds like a kind of Judeo-Christian suffering is good for you argument, if you want to keep it around. I mean, you can bring up things like, well, what about great artists and so on? Well, great artists may have suffered intermittently, but people who are prone to depression, chronic depression, don't accomplish anything. Their lives are just on hold permanently. So that is just one aspect. And of course, a lot of the problems in our world are caused by the fact that half the population is below average intelligence. And that is not exactly something to shout about. All our leaders get away with ridiculous stuff because half the population are gullible sheep. I think we should cure that. And we know many ways by which it can be done. I've got a list somewhere at home. Well, I'm not at home at the moment, but on the computer, a list of about 20 or 30 genetic tweaks that could be done to sort of raise the level of humanity quite dramatically.
Perhaps that would be an interesting question to ask. Are you in favour of things like programs designed to raise IQ, or those things that have got a eugenic slant to them? What's your views on that?
Excuse me, what my view on what? My view on what?
I mean, attempts to improve the physical base of normality. For instance, to try to raise the IQ within a population a few points or something like that. Do you think that is legitimate participation in the manifestation of divinity, or it's hubris going beyond our human remit?
If I understand correct, pardon if I'm not, uh, I completely don't believe in IQ levels of and tests, because I don't believe in universal mind. There is no universal thinking and universal mind. Every culture, every population, every nation have their own culture, rules of thinking, procedures of thinking. I stand on plurality. So, for example, IQ test and it's I don't use this language and describing and terms to describe some ideas. So, for what? We can ask a question for what? What we want to reach to reach to get what goal we want.
But say within a definite cultural norm that might not be shared by others, that was capable of being measured, and that there were ways of making a physical difference to it, would you think that was a thing worth considering, or not at all?
Excuse me, I cannot get the sense of the question.
For instance, if it was possible to make populations improve in respect of not having the ability to pass on disease, or to be able to do tasks within a certain population, it may not be a universal standard, but the principle in general of just improving the physical abilities that we have. I mean, is that something you think we should not interfere with? I hope that's clear.
Yes, it became clear. Transhumanism and overcoming human limits in many ways. It's this position opens for us when we face the statement the God is dead. When we lose divine source of origin of harmony, it became hubris. So transhumanism and improvements of human nature by pills, by implants, in any ways, by education of also. It's all by massive education, for example. It's all of it. It's hubris. It's post sacred position, post Abrahamic, post pagan. It doesn't matter. It's post sacred and anti sacred. It's against harmony. It's against the form, the shape, the order established by gods or by God, for example. It's also, I think it also doesn't matter, gods or one god. It's anti-sacred position. It's unchained. It's tied. It's like Prometheus unchained. And when Prometheus became unchained, he, of course, after he bring the fire, he brings the science, he also bring and give a poisoned gifts to the humanity it's technology and so on and so on. So Prometheus, it's evil spirit, is a plague on our European and global people's heads. So I'm purely anti Prometheus, and for me it's improvement, and also for what? To avoid the death. The death is unavoidable. So it's one of the points why I regret it. I can accept it. It's they are trying to avoid the death in all of aspects. They want to be physically or digitally immortals. And what?
If I could answer that,
we should improve our society.
Well, how can we improve our society? I mean, you're saying the original sin was, lighting a fire and living in a house, because that is the beginning of technology. Once we're on that path, there's no end. I mean, do you want to sort of give it? You want to strip off and go and live under a hedge? Because that's what you're advocating. Naked savages in the woods again.
My position is more complicated than advocating just simple living, like, for example, American anthropologist John Zerzan do, and I disagree with his position. And it's I hope my book, when I explain it in details and answer to the very sharp questions about, I hope it will be able in English for the next years, a couple of years, I think. And on my website, I put link to the chat. You can find some articles in English and other language where I try to describe and shape my position correctly. It's and for me, I think it's different kinds of some kind of science and technology. I not going against medicine and helping people to save them from physical suffer and so on, but globally historical aspect, what's the main goal? Why we should improve our society by many ways, and eugenics too, because if it's a question about future, about it's this point, this topic touch everything. Future, how we imagine time, it's a linear time or it's endless line of progress from the left bottom corner rising to the right top corner, or we see the time as pagans, as cycle, when one born, rise, growing up, and finally getting old and die, and everything like we remember from the Elder Edda, the cattle die and kinsmen die, and you also immortal one, and you will also die. So it's a question about how we face the death, and every nation, every society, every culture sometime will die, and European too. And it's a question how we face our death. If we want to face our death, our gods of death, our ancestral who already died, and not disappear in the black void like atheism trying to teach us, or they of course are not burning in hell. They present, like in Slavic traditions, the world of the dead man, of your dead ancestor, it's this world, it's not underworld or some like heavens. This world is also near you, just on your back. You can easily change your location. So they always close to you. So how we want to face our death, like warriors, like heroes, like wise men, like sadhus, like, or we can overcome death, understanding our non-mortal divine nature hidden in our human nature, as I said before, or we want to face our death in comfortable beds in hospital with many wire detecting our breathing, our heartbeat, or we want to face the death when we flowing through the metaverse and thinking, oh, now we are immortal digital minds, digital so-called souls or hosts, and the problem of the death is already solved and so on. But in some time, someone will switch off your server and you will also die. So it's improvement of bodies of nations. It's touched many themes, many philosophical categories like time, like life, life and death, and how we feel got it. It's a paradigm. If we pagans and see time as a cycle, so death is unavoidable. But after it will be a newborn, new reborn and a new origin. If we want to keeping the progress and technological development and science, so it's impossible to. It's a different thing. They lead us to the different final points, and it's impossible to combine them, to make some kind of synthesis. For me, it's impossible. Pardon my dead a lot of dead word speech.
Oh, well, thanks very much. I just
a brief question about
yeah, sure.
This topic of death really
Yeah.
is extremely important. Now, if this pagan conception of life is of God, but the divine is immanent, it follows that there is no survival. Well, okay, he said it's cyclical.
It's a good question.
So,
Yeah.
but there is no an immanent pagan god will not survive. Will not allow the soul or the individual to survive because it's all immanent, all in one place.
Yeah.
The advantage of a transcendent divinity is transcends. It goes beyond the physical and the horizontal. It's vertical as well. So I'm phrasing a bit crudely. What does he think?
So, Father Frank, you're saying, which I think is a very good question, does the belief in a purely immanent deity mean that there is no such thing as reincarnation or an afterlife?
Well, reincarnation brings in a different set of problems.
But it is assuming that there's something which is non-physical that will continue to live in another incarnation.
Well, immanent means it's not beyond the world, but it's in the world. Immanent is, shall I down here, to be very crude. So in that sense, I can't see how you can survive your individuality, can survive your physical death.
Yeah.
But I mean, a transcendent divinity is beyond the world, is beyond here and there. So that divinity would allow you to survive. I mean, I'm putting it very crudely.
No, I think you're touching on an important
I don't know what you said.
point. I don't know whether you heard the question that Father Frank put. I mean, he was thinking aloud to some extent that about the fact that if deity is purely immanent and very closely tied to the physical, then there isn't the possibility of the divinity within the individual somehow surviving the individual's physical death. Therefore, afterlife in terms of a heaven isn't really possible, or reincarnation isn't possible. Do you think those views of the afterlife are compatible with the manifest sense of divinity? I hope that question is clear. Yeah, did you understand the question?
Yes.
Yeah.
I believe there is many ways and how men relate to the death and afterlife.
Yeah.
It depends on culture, different culture, different nations, different traditions, different teachings, different spiritual levels. So, and in this way, and for me, I follow Advaita Vedanta teaching. So our divine nature, it's not only immortal, it's non-mortal because it's not born. It's more than immortal, more than eternal. It's undescribable. It's possible. It's apophatic in our terms. So our soul, it's like Atman and Brahman for me. I stand on this position. And our body is some kind of mask. It's another interesting topic about sacred theater. And here I prefer to use Hellenic terms of Dionysus cults. Our body, it's some kind of body, and our personality, of course, too. It's some kind of theatrical masks using by God to playing different dramas or comedies in here inner inside his mind in theater. So it's not a question about inside this cosmogonical theater, inside this endless dramas, comedies, and scenes of life of billions of the worlds and culture and natures. The one, the absolute God, show himself to himself. There is always possible. Everything is possible. Every relation to the death and afterlife is possible. It's only a question about to which one culture we relate, or how or what spiritual level we can reach in our life. We can open in our ritual practice. Anyway, Advaita, I think Advaita Vedanta by Kashmirian Shaivism, it's a perfect and the best one explanation about relationship between the absolute God, his nature as a man, and examples and stories about the great sadhus, the great yogin masters. They show us about how if you are Jivan Mukta, if you realize your divine nature in your life, so you live till your death as a God inside the human body, inside the human mind. So our bodies, our persons, it's a mask, and afterlife, it's afterlife of the mask. For example, when actor put off the mask, what afterlife face this mask, and who is the life, who is living after, the mask or the actor? For me, actor is immortal, is more than eternal. He's non-born and never dies, and it's not a question to him. It's only our roles of the mask of Askar, mask of Vladimir, or mask of Svarte. We all now sitting on the global or virtual pantheon, and the only one Brahma using our many Atmans, speaking only to his own, to himself.
Yes, thanks very much, Askr. Father Frank, I think it is certainly notable that all the historic pagan religions in their very wide variety have seemed to have had a very strong belief in some transcendent happening at death. People have been willing to put their extremely expensive objects into the ground and as a gifts for the dead going into the other world. And I think it was a universally acknowledged thing that the Druids had a profound belief in reincarnation, the transmigration of souls, and Plato did it himself as well. So it certainly has been something that's historically been present.
I don't know about the Druids, but certainly the ancient Egyptians.
They certainly did, yes, they certainly did.
Belief in life after death,
Yeah.
passing through different levels of reality, having different magic formula to gain access to the next reality and so on. But I mean, his question, the thing of it depends on the culture. I'm not sure. I mean, there is after all philosophical arguments which you can deploy concerning any concept of survival after death. Asking the question, what, do you posit a distinction of soul and body, dualistic, or you posit a unity, and then when it means, for example, for a body, the body does not survive, the body disintegrates. The atoms are dissipated. So what constitutes a self which survives? These are philosophical questions. They're not necessarily cultural.
Yeah.
Yeah, again,
Absolutely.
soul is a religious concept. Yeah. People don't, in philosophy, people don't use the word soul very much because it's a word of religion. They speak of mind. Let's not argue about words, essentially.
I think it's a bit like now.
Right, I think we unless if you have a question, please, so I can get the two communities going. But I mean, did you have a question or comment?
I think really it's the situation we've got now with in Christian Church. It's putting people on this, dumbing people down, as well as this so-called pandemic that's going around. They're getting the vaccine.
I think you're speaking to quite. If you want to maybe come forward, or if it's if it's on. I think I need to get a mic. Michael York. Michael, are you there? Because I'd like to ask what your thoughts were in relation to the point that Dirk brought up at the moment. I know you tend to have quite a physical sense of divinity, whether you're in favour of using different means to improve people physically. Michael, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
All right. I mean, no, I am also transhumanist, probably not as intense as Dirk is. I think there may be, I think we have to balance it more with our really understanding of nature and the natural balance. But, and at the same time, moving away from that, I mean, I can understand our speakers' criticism of feminism, and I can share some of that. But at the same time, it is and I would say it's a legitimate attempt for women to gain some type of recognition, some type of equality, which they don't have and haven't had. And so I think it's a complex situation in that sense, but I don't think you can, I mean, everyone has their own understanding of paganism, and there are many, many different expressions of paganism. There's no authority that says this is what we believe, this is what we do, this is how we practice. But within the overall pagan movement, you cannot deny the role that women have played in actually furthering it, developing it, and contributing towards it. I mean, although we may not always agree with everything, I think that has to be recognized and acknowledged, and to some extent honored. So that's basically my comments.
Mm. Oh well, I didn't know you were a transhumanist, Michael, but that entirely makes sense in relation to your views. No, so thanks. Vladimir, that's a hand up, I think.
Yes, I did. I
Excellent.
have a question.
Unleash your question, please.
Yes, Sted, remember once we were speaking shortly a few years ago, and I said that, Sted, look, inside every person there is a God. So the God is a real identity of everyone. And you said, Vladimir, do you mean that if you pray to God, you pray to yourself? I can't imagine that. That's what I would like to ask Askr. If he said that's the same point, if according to Advaita Vedanta or to some other old traditions, the God is inside the person, and how you understand to pray to someone, for example, Askr, if you pray, do you pray for yourself, or you do not pray at all, or maybe you have any other techniques? What could you clarify your point? Thank you.
Great question. Thank you, Vladimir.
Okay. Yes, I can answer. And do my own, and to put only and at the same time altar of the god and altar of my own life and fruits of my activity. And it's also interesting, every time it's interesting to think about it's like speaking with actor, back speaking with actor who wears this mask, and this mask so actor, please could you change this mask? As we know, ancient Greek mask is happy and unhappy. And if we talking about
Askr, your connection is very, very bad. I heard you speak about the actor and the mask. Yeah.
Something like to avoid physical. Do you hear me good?
No, I'm sorry. It was very. Is it possible to simply answer Vladimir's question again? Because I don't think it. Yeah, it was very distorted. Unfortunately, we're struggling with the poor connection.
Yes, I also see some troubles. From which place, from which my word I was disconnected.
Yeah, I mean, Vladimir was asking if you pray, do you think of yourself as praying to yourself? in a sense.
I understand the questions. Just want to understand from what word I was disconnected, or answer once again from the beginning.
Yeah, perhaps start from the beginning. I think that would be easier.
Okay. So once again, for me, I prefer not to pray, but to glorify and do my own deals, and to only put fruits and completed deals and works on the altar of the god. And this altar is the same time both altar of Odin and my own. When I see what I do, what I've done, and if we talking about prayer, not glorifying, but prayer, for example, asking for the good health or the good weight, good travel, something like that. It's interesting. It's if we take a look from the third person, it's like a mask trying to talking back to the actor who wears this mask and asking this actor, please, could you change the scenario, change the screenplay of my mask, of my of person my mask express. It's every time very interesting. But if everything what you do, it's the same role, so I see no I don't see the problem in this situation. Of course you can pray and when you pray, you always pray to someone who higher, who have power and possibilities to change something. You, of course, it's not so smart to pray to somebody who lower than you, who don't have possibilities to change your situation. And it's interesting differences, maybe like relationships between son and father. If son asking father to help him, is it pray or it's just regular? And what kind of difference you can notice between father and son? Father is older and you are maybe young. But in the middle way, in the Midgard, you make the old man, but to the god, he will also the Odin, the All-Father. So, of course, he can answer you. But on the higher level of spiritual adventure, you understand that it's also you, and why you cannot help you the middle in the Midgard, in the middle world, to clear his way through this life, through the cycle, to avoid him from some maybe troubles or dramatics, or give him more struggle and so on. So it's for me, it's not a problem. And once again, I prefer to glorify. I prefer not to asking something, but to show the All-Father, see what you done using my hands. God have no other hands, only us. He saw through our eyes, feeling the taste of the blood, of the mysteries of the red wine on our lips and tongues, and everything they can do, they doing by our hands. So there is no difference. We can pray and answer on our fingers.
All right.
David, I did not understand the answer to Vladimir's about prayer. Did you understand it?
Yes, I did. Father Frank has just asked, so I'll just briefly summarize that. I think Ask understood the word pray more in the sense of asking for things, and I think that wasn't. He preferred to offer things which he had done. So it was not the relationship of just of merely making a request from a person who dispenses.
It is not making a request. It's something else.
Yes, that's right. It's something else. I mean, he sees his hands as being, in a sense, the hands of the deity on earth, because the deity doesn't have hands. So we are the doers of the deity's work to some extent, and it's like relations between a son and a father, that kind of thing, and it's more complex.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, there are different conceptions of prayer. One of the conceptions today is that prayer is really self-expression. You're expressing your feeling, your desire, rather than asking. Or
just words of praise, or saying, which is Vladimir, did you have any comment in relation to what Ask said? Did you understand the response? I hope.
Yes, basically I understand, but
I know.
But I understand. But to say shortly, for example, if we pray for the All Father or in the beginning of the blood every time, we are just applying for some deities, for some higher forces. The question is again, do we understand that we apply for ourselves, or we apply for someone else outside of ourselves?
I don't. There isn't the clear distinction, I think, is there? Where I don't think it's. I mean, Askr said that he was a follower of Advaita, which is the idea of non-duality. So, and I think even someone that maybe isn't so Advaita as I am, we are all part of a whole. So there isn't this really clear distinction between the divinity one's praying. We've all got some spark within us. We're trying to make it flourish, I think. But Vladimir, do you very much agree with Ask's position, or you have a different point of view?
Well, I have slightly different point of view. My point of view is the point of view is, if you're really aware of this higher, the God inside yourself, that you are this main figure, that you do not need any rituals, any prayers, even any glorifications. You should just realize yourself within a deep meditation state, and then you can really just get it live, realize it in full sense of this word.
Yeah.
But if you still have any impulse, any motivation to pray to someone who is outside of you, that means you are still looking for some authorities. You are looking for some authorities from outside, in the books, in the groups, in the history, and so forth. And then even if you say, like, I'm a traditionalist, I'm looking for tradition, that's still that you are looking for something which is outside yourself. That means, for me, it's not a question of intellect or education. It's a question of your ontological roots. So what is your motivation? How deep is your own self? So how do you realize yourself? What is your identity, deepest identity? That's why there are different people and different levels of understanding and different levels of psychology and so forth. That's why as for me, all the time I guess that this mysticism is not thinkable without the deep trance states and the exercising of getting those states using all certain exercises like breathings, utiseta, and so forth, meditation.
Yeah.
So that's my point. And that if we speak about formalities, yes. So we all know there are different points of view. There is Advaita and Dvaita and whatever, yes. And we might belong to different schools or to the same one. But my point is that to open the deep identity of ourselves, we have to practice it really like mystics. And not just thinking about it, because the thinking is very superficial level of realizing something. Yeah, that's... Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I don't want to. It's interesting what Vladimir just said, but it's also a reference to authority. I mean, even if you embrace Advaita Vedanta and so on, there are also the gurus which give you directions. And people go to the gurus to find direction and rules to achieve non-duality. So in a way, it's there's authority also comes into that.
Yes, I mean, Father Frank was speaking about the value of authority in Advaita tradition, or the authority of the Guru to clear away darkness, which is what the word means, and to lead one to the light. I think that's a very good point. And as people who are perhaps of a traditional mind, authority is very important to take guidance from people who are more advanced in something. I'll just ask the people here if they have any questions in the room. Ronnie, do you have any? I think that Nick, maybe from an old one. I just want. Do you have any? Heather?
You mentioned Kali Yuga. I'd like to know.
Thoughts about Kali Yuga, yeah, that's
very good. Is that an era of conflict? Are we not too, I understand that as an era of conflict, an age of conflict. Maybe not always an age of conflict. Will that come to an end? What does that mean?
No, Heather was asking about the Kali Yuga. Before asking ask about that, it officially started when Lord Krishna died. So it was midnight there was a particular day, a moment when it started, when because he died, then we were entering this age of darkness, when righteousness is declining until it will be brought to an end, I think, by the 10th avatar that would appear. So Askr, do you have any thing to say about the Kali Yuga?
What I think about Kali Yuga?
Yeah.
We live in the early beginnings of Kali Yuga. It's the first lights of dawn of Kali Yuga. It's only beginning. It's far away from the end of Kali Yuga. And in different culture, it came in different forms and in different historical periods and times. And for me, Hindus, they were pioneers of entering the Kali Yuga, but Europeans make Kali Yuga global. and the center of the black hole of Kali Yuga is the center of Europe and probably in the USA. So it's a reality. The reality is etymological sense, the world of material res. It's also Kali Yuga.
All right, Mick, is your hand still up from the first question, or is it for a new question, which you're welcome to? It was already...
No, it's not. No.
Okay.
Yeah, I must have I didn't realise you had to take it down. I thought it happened automatically.
Mike, do you have any things you'd like to say, comments, or yeah?
Well, to go back to the other gentleman's comment earlier on about like obviously the IQ. I know it's going back a bit, but obviously with me, I never got given what you call I never got given a proper education. Obviously, I went to primary and I went to high school, and then, but with me being not too smart and with dyslexia and stuff, I was when I went through primary and high school and college, I always had a 1-to-1. So sometimes it's difficult for me to understand what people are saying, even if I do listen.
Yeah.
So obviously, the point I'm trying to make is that when it comes to like keeping up with everyone, I'm quite slow to what people say. Even if I write stuff down, I'll have to when the conversation is over and all this is over, I'll go back and I'll have to like Google stuff, and so even if I don't like contribute to the conversation at the time and stuff, I'll be like, oh yeah, that's what you meant, and obviously stuff like that. So I don't, to be honest, I don't understand I don't even understand the point I'm trying to make, like, but.
Oh well, that sounds I'm when I speak, it's exactly the same.
Yeah. So even if even though I'm sitting here listening, I'll write everything down. I mean, I've been writing stuff down here, like, but I'll go back and onto Google and Google what you're talking about, like, but.
Oh well, that sounds a great attitude. So no, that's good. Thanks very much for that. Edith, you're always very quiet, but when you say something, it's worth hearing. Edith, do you have any thoughts or questions to ask?
No, just thanks. I was blown away by putting all that in context. I love the bigger picture. You know, it's just fantastic. I've actually posted a comment because it made me think of Emperor Hadrian's famous last words, but I've written it out. Thank you very much.
Oh, okay. Thanks very much. Just as you mentioned it, Heather, I was actually having a chat with a Hindu priest friend of mine this morning about the Kali Yuga, and he was saying that in normal times, dharma, that's to say righteousness, has got 4 legs, but in the Kali Yuga it's just got 1. Normally it's got satya, which is truth, dhyana, which is consideration, tapasya, the ability to take great pains with things, to work hard for things. But in Kali Yuga it just has what one could call the beauty of appearances. So there's a certain superficiality in the Kali Yuga. That's what he was saying.
It's a great image. It's a great metaphor.
Soch, which is one of the legs, which is concerned with tidiness, cleanliness, and appearance. So he says the cow just has 1 leg at the moment. So I will pass it on. But it seemed to be auspicious that I was talking to him this morning, and you've asked that, so that's good. Now. I think we've probably we've come to about 2.5, about 2 hours. So maybe we should be thinking about allowing Ask to to cook some dinner or do something. Does anyone have any final questions? 'Cause I think they've been quite wide-ranging. Andre, I don't know if you've got a question, or Ralph, do you have, you know, if you've got something to, yeah, but if you could probably sort of come forward a bit because your voice is a bit soft. Okay. If no one's got any further points, perhaps you would finish the I don't know where the feedback's going. Finish the meeting with some words from your own tradition. I think you had something prepared to close the proceedings.
Okay. I'll try to turn. You can see me.
Yes,
so
wonderful.
Let's try.
Yeah.
I think I often I use very short glorifying and tools, at least shorthand, open and ending of rights or glorifies. My everyday practice very simple in the good sense of this words. So, and I add a few words in Russia because I think it will be interesting to hear glorifying to the god Odin in Russian words. I also have this one carved idol from well-known Russian master Alexander. His face, yes, he has 4 faces of 4 different Nordic gods, and of course Odin, All-Father, and little candle, the perfect Sicius Urus. Heil Odin, All-Father, Yuga, Warha, Askr Svarte. Слава богам предкам, слава Одину, слава Фрей, слава бездне великой, слава богам. Пусть проведут нас боги достойной дорогой через время, мора и путь. Да преисполнимся мы на земле благом так же, как вы, полны именами. Да будет так. Слава богам. Heil Odin, Gangleri, Odin, Gangarada, Odin, Vectam, Ansus, Ingus, Urus. That's very short, but many times speaking by me and our comrades in Russia. They use these formulas, these names and tools when they perform right. So it's our common short tools and pray in the sense of this word as pray and glorifying too. So thanks all of you gentlemen and lady for your questions. I hope my ideas you understand the main sense, and for details look into the books, read books, and I put a link to my website and my email if you want to continue or clarify aspects. Of course, openly write me and I will answer you as soon as possible. I'm very open to any conversation and talks.
Askr, thank you so much for the time, and I think your words were strong enough that they came through the poor channel we have, and they touched us. So I'm very grateful for that, and for being able to see the image, the four-faced image, which is I'm not familiar with that. So thanks very much, and thanks for your generosity in wanting to continue the conversation with anyone, which is very important. Right, I will just say a couple of words in Old Norse, blow the candle out. Sigur Idor, Sigur Idor, Sigur Os, Sigur Os, Frieder Idor, Frieder Idor, Frieder Os, Frieder. Thank you. Thanks everyone for persevering with our technical problems. Some really good questions. Good to see everyone. Thanks very much for joining us and keeping through to the end. And I look forward to seeing some of you at the next bloat or at one of our other functions. But if anyone wants to get in touch with me, I will send you a link with a code to get a discount on the book, which I very much recommend. It's a superb read in 2 volumes. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone.
Yes.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.